Alright, so now comes probably the hardest part of building a shuttle. And that is tuning the damn thing to make it fly. They don't... Asymmetric craft are kind of a pain. They're difficult to fly. Once you get them tuned, they're pretty easy to launch, actually. But until then, they're definitely not. Nope. So, without further ado, I guess, let's, oh, I'm gonna make sure I don't have crew in here, yeah. I realized after I clicked the button I didn't put parachutes on here either. I don't usually use parachutes for landing, but I also didn't put landing gear on here. And I usually use parachutes for water landings. So, I should be able to get this going slowly enough to land in water. Oh, I have my thing hibernating. Right. Right about there, yeah. And liftoff. Alright, so that doesn't fly half bad. We're pitching up pretty hard, but we're doing alright. Whoa, what the hell was that? It just like jerked to the side. That was weird. Oh, why are we rolling? What's going on here? Well, it looks like nothing's producing an excessive amount of drag. I don't have any big, giant red spikes coming out the back of this thing, so that's encouraging. Wonder if I do need more roll authority. No, that makes it sway when I do it with those engines. Maybe it's at the roll. Oop. This is flying surprisingly well for a first draft. I can tell these engines need to tilt farther, which is a bit I'm annoyed by, I guess. But we'll see. I'm able to pitch it with my hand. Like, they have enough gimbal to do it. It just needs to actually do it. Am I out of power? Electric charge? No. I may just need to tilt those engines more. I'm really struggling to keep it. It's struggling to stay stable. Half throttle. I can move it up. Like, the instant I let go, it just goes all the way down. It's kind of frustrating knowing that the gimbal can do it. Like, the gimbals can move that far. But the game won't. It won't move them to compensate. see if I can fly this by hand. Okay. That's a little bit better. Oh, wait a minute. I know, I forgot. Custom 1, custom 2 needs to be... I forgot to set my controls for these modes. Where is the docking port? Damn it, I can't see them. I can't test without my docking port. And I have no light, which doesn't help anything. Edit action groups. Okay, now can I see the docking port? Maybe? No? Well, that's balls. I guess I gotta do that in the VAB. I can't reach it. It's not jacking it up too badly, but... Well, nice to know at least this engine is really well balanced. This works. Like, that's really, really stable. Even with SAS off, it barely drifts. Let's get into orbit here. We'll test our re-entry behavior. Make sure that we can get back into the atmosphere well. Most of this launch has worked out fairly well, especially for a first launch. I don't think I would have had enough fuel with that flub up during the launch and trying to get that balanced with the drop tank. I don't think I would have enough fuel to quite, because I'm gonna 160. I might actually have enough fuel as it is, even with that mess up, to get to Minmus and back. It realistically only takes 1,000 either way. I'd just like to have a little bit of extra for maneuvering, but just to get there and get into orbit, about 1,000 delta V each way. You can aero brake on the way back, and I don't mind having to do that with shuttles. Honestly, it's kind of tough to get them back from. One of the weaknesses of a shuttle design is basically a lack of heat shielding. So if you're coming in, if I want to re-enter this craft from Minmus orbit, I have to be real gentle about it, because that's a lot of heat. And most of this stuff is reasonably heat tolerant, but it's not, you know, it's not invincible. I have to aero brake. I do it in a couple of passes, and I don't mind doing that just to make it work, and partially also to save on delta V. So I'm going to rebalance that engine, give it another launch, and then the next launch I think we'll try to actually we'll do it crewed. I'll add landing gear, and we'll try to launch the whole mission. We'll go to Minmus. Or we'll go to the Mun. I did the Mun with that baby lander last time. That was pretty fun. Tough. It has barely enough thrust to weight ratio with those little ants to get to the surface, but it does it. Oh yeah, the maneuver node is going to be off because my heading is off. Oh well. It'll still get me into orbit, but it's going to start to spin once it gets to the end of it. because I don't have a... And now I can see it now that I'm in the daytime, actually. Right when I said that, it like moves into a shadow and then I can't see it anymore. There we go. Control from here. Wait, no. There we go. Now that'll be more accurate. I gotta make sure I don't forget to set that in the VAB. Perfect. Alright. So we're gonna re-enter. I don't have landing gear, so we're gonna splash down just east. I'm gonna aim for between... I'll try to splash down between KSC and the island airfield. Depending on how the arrow goes on this. Oh, I didn't... Oh, no. I didn't bring a fuel drain valve. So this may be hairy. Well, I guess we'll see. I may have forgotten one too many things on this. I'm gonna be really, really heavy coming in. That's bad news. I guess I can start my re-entry in reverse. We'll get to here. I'm gonna start my re-entry in reverse. We'll try to run it with the Bobcats active. And see if we can't just blow off a ton of fuel and plop into the atmosphere, you know? Basically just drop straight down. This is going to be a horrific re-entry. I'm gonna push this thing absolutely to the limits. We're just gonna drop. Actually, it won't be a hot re-entry, but it'll be a good test of how the aerodynamics handle and my ability to recover from what is essentially an orbital stall. I'm gonna drop this thing pretty much all the way down to 0. Actually, I have more than enough to drop it down to 0 and then just drop into the atmosphere. I need to at least get rid of most of this fuel, though. All right. Let's see how this goes. I'm not going incredibly fast. Seems stable enough with a really, really steep angle of attack. I feel like I don't need the air brakes active. There, we're starting to get into atmosphere. This is surprisingly stable. I won't be putting any rudders on this. The vertical stabilizer does its job well enough on its own. But this is, aerodynamically speaking, like, I mean, you can see I have very little drag. I'm very pleased with this. I'm gonna hit the brakes. Yeah. So that's drag. I'm gonna go land this out right at the end of the runway. Certainly seems I can glide well enough to do that. The big weakness that I had with my last shuttle attempt, that I was trying to rectify here, and I think I may have finally hit it, is that I had to be so perfect with my re-entry because it had such bad aerodynamic. Like, if I missed, I had no ability to glide. I couldn't, you know, if I was off by a couple kilometers, I couldn't close the distance. And for such a small craft, there's really no excuse for that. You know, it should be able to glide that far. So I only did maybe one or two missions with it and just was generally not impressed. And this is performing much, much better. I'm really pleased with this design so far. Like, I'm putting distance on these wings. I guess I won't make it quite to the end of the runway. Or will I? Seeing how I do have a little bit of fuel left. Man, I don't want to tilt these engines. Maybe I'll just have to get better at flying them. Flying this guy while I'm got the drop tank up. Alright, slow, way down. Way down. I'm gonna hit this as gently as possible. Perfect landing. Alright. That was super fun. So let's go back to the VAB and adjust some things. I gotta tweak those engines. I gotta add landing gear. Landing gear is a very important part of this whole recipe. Okay. So the first thing is I forgot for control from here. I need to make sure that I'm getting the correct navigation here. And I'm actually going to have that be... This is kind of how I set up my other shuttle, and it worked well enough. And these need to rotate just a tiny bit. That might be enough. That's not enough. It needs 2 of those little baby clicks. Oh, no, that was 3. There we go. 2 clicks. That bell's kind of close, but I'm going to leave it. Oh, landing gear. Duh. I'm about to put Kerbals in here. I have to be able to get to the ground. This is still small enough I can get away with medium landing gear. Normally you have to be a little bit careful about where you put your gear and like balancing it out with the rest of the craft and your center of mass and stuff, because you need to be able to take off as well as land efficiently. However, in a shuttle, all we have to do is land. You don't have to take off at all. So that makes this whole problem generally much simpler. No steering. 40% is plenty of brakes for that. Start retracted. Then we're going to use a single medium up at the nose. I don't want to accidentally attach it to the, the decoupler. I know. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, now we've got landing gear. Thinking if there's anything else I need. Oh yeah, I need my deploys. Okay, now those will toggle. I have my flight mode set up. I rotated my engines. I'm gonna actually move these down a little too. Yeah. Okay. So let's try to get a successful launch and re-entry here first before we put crew on this. I gotta be able to land safely before I risk the lives of my faithful crew, you know. Oh, right. That hibernating, sleeping on the job again. Well, this is already a bit more stable. We should break the sound barrier right at 5 kilometers. Maybe a little bit high. Yeah, not quite there yet. So I could add a little bit more fuel. What are we at? About 200 more fuel. Alright, so I just can't throttle too hard. Alright, this flies much better. That little adjustment really helped. It's still a little bit touchy. You see, if I let go of the pitch for too long, it starts to really swing. But it's flying much nicer than it did last time, that's for sure. I think I should be able to get into orbit with the contents of this tank. At least it's really not at any risk of just, like, completely spinning out and wiping. That would be pretty frustrating. It's really behaving pretty well here. Go. Oh, and we're empty. We'll drop you off. Turn on our maneuvering engine and our maneuvering navigation. Deploy our deployables. Perfect. Alright, I'll set my circularization burn. Perfect. Rotate to maneuver. Warp to it. That tank will just burn up on re-entry. I'm okay with spending about 200 Delta V up here. That's not a total loss. With circularization burns, I actually start right at the node time so that my burn finishes at the node rather than centering it over like I normally would for interplanetary maneuvers. I've found it gives me a more circular, closer to a perfect circle in my orbit when I do it that way. Time warps like a pro, doesn't give a crap. That's nice. I always like it when I can use time warp on a vessel for getting faster burns. Perfect. Alright, well, now let's try to land this. We'll do one full orbit. And I'll start my I'll start my retro burn usually right over the desert airfield. But I'm actually going to end up intentionally hitting a little bit short because I want to test. I want to glide a decent distance of this and see how that goes. That was one of the biggest weaknesses of the old design, so if I can glide a decent distance with this, that would be wonderful. When you're coming in from really long distance, it's hard to be perfectly accurate with your trajectories. Even if I use like a trajectories mod to do it. Where exactly you land depends on your re-entry, exactly how you end up re-entering yourself. Oop, turn that down. Hey, if you stall or you swoop weird or you come in at a bad angle of attack or even at the right angle of attack, it's gonna change where you're putting all of your craft on the ground. Alright. Well, I'm glad that didn't give me crap about being inside the payload fairing. Although I hope that also means it doesn't... Well, I mean, I guess I had the arrow overlay up before, and I didn't see any big spikes coming off of it, so it must be alright, mostly. Well, let's re-enter. Oh, crap, I forgot that stupid valve again. Alright, well, let's re-enter really, really heavy. And see if I can even land this. If we're just gonna... Man, we're just gonna burn up. I'm gonna have a ton of extra speed. Yeah, you can see I can barely keep the nose forward now. Or the nose up. Oh, yeah. Well, that answers that, I guess. I don't have any control over this. Okay, Sarah, Sarah. Well, let's watch and see what happens. For educational reasons. Watch it put itself down perfectly in the ocean. Yeah, whatever. Can't land with a whole literal full tank of fuel. It's just way too heavy. I need to add my dump valve.